What's up, MotoBrewskis, and what's up? In this video is a whole bunch of lessons, tips, and insights that I've learned over the last few years of doing multiple multi-day long-distance rides on dual sports and adventure bikes. Now, this past weekend, I was riding with Pat, the man from Frisky Dingo's motorcycle garage, all the way from Colorado through to New Mexico and then to Oklahoma to a place called the Great Plains Bunkhouse, and then back all the way in less than 48 hours. So quite a long distance ride. And I had a number of, issues, small things, but, turned out to be quite big things or frustrating things on this particular journey. So here's the first tip. So the first tip is this. Oftentimes we keep falling into the trap of it's about the destination. It's about the destination. And while that's important, it's also important to plan the route as much as it is to plan the destination. Now, just before we left, or it was the day before, Pat sent me a GPX on Gaia, which is a navigation app, and to my phone. So he said to me, well, can you load that up onto your Garmin? And the reason for that was we were, it was only the two of us riding. And so in that sort of situation, if you're riding in a group, it's very different. But if you're with only two people, it's important that the two of you know where you're going. And the reason for that is because things go wrong, right? Sometimes power units fail, which is exactly what happened with Pat. And he was riding a Harley Davidson 1250 Panamera, has a built-in power console, and for some reason it just wasn't charging, even though it was connected to the power supply. And what that meant was that I had to pick up some of the navigation. Now, if I hadn't had the ability to load up the route, that would have caused a serious problem because we were in incredibly remote areas. There's literally nothing there.
So we just pulled over. There's literally nothing here other than gravel roads. It's so remote. It's nuts, man.
Like there's nothing there. And so if you wind up getting into trouble from a navigation perspective, which I believe is probably one of the most important things, it can ultimately ruin the entire ride. You can get into trouble. You can get into situations where you're stuck on the side of the road. You could have a mechanical failure or whatever the reason is. And so if you don't know where you're going, that always will wind up being a situation you don't want to be in. Now, I've been on multi-day rides before in a group, and oftentimes relying on other people to navigate simply because I didn't take the GPX route and then load it up into my Garmin XT2 as an example. So one of the things I learned was about how do you take a Gaia GPX route and then load it up into a Garmin. And I'm on a Mac, and I found that incredibly difficult.
Look, this is incredibly difficult for me, but you are the absolute last person I could think of to ask.
Looked at all sorts of ways to do it, from downloading Garmin Drive, taking the GPX, trying to load that into Garmin Drive, using the Garmin as an external device, and none of that stuff worked. And the only thing that did work was to actually download the GPX route from Gaia and then onto like a micro SD card and then load that into the Garmin XT2 directly. And that was the only way that I could do it. And thankfully, I was able to do that. So now the other thing that was really important for us was the distance. And because it was so remote, it was very difficult, or let's just say frustrating, to constantly think about, well, are you going to have the distance or the fuel to go the distance that you need? So obviously I've got an Acerbis 3.8 gallon tank. I can get over 200 miles on that. We're doing 500, right? And there's no fuel stops anywhere. And so what Pat was quite vigilant about was like, Matthew, you need to take an extra fuel bag. So one of those fuel bags was this one. This is a giant Loop 1 gallon fuel bag. Took that as well. But not only this, I also took another MSR fuel canister, which I have over here, which is this one. And so I used both of these. So I used 1 gallon from here and about 880 milliliters or around 30 ounces in this one, just to get us back to the fuel station, the gas station, basically. Now with this one, even if, and I use GPT to figure this out, but even if I get 200 plus miles on per gallon on this bike, 30 ounces or 887 milliliters is only going to get me around 10 extra miles. So when you put these two things together, it's still a situation where you have to know the route. If you don't know the route and you don't know, or you're not constantly vigilant around like, okay, so how am I going to get this bike back to a gas station without running out of fuel? Because if that situation happens, it's going to be absolutely no bueno for a number of different reasons. Now, the other point I wanted to make is that you have to prep your bike like your life depends on it, because it does.
Your life depends on it.
And I moved house recently, and somewhere I lost my toolkit, right? So this is a toolkit that I bought. And again, it arrived the morning after I had to leave. This is a Cruise Tools toolkit, which you can get on Amazon. Basically has like, all the tools you might need for this bike. It's amazing to me today how many guys are riding without tools. Like, it's nuts. And it's mainly the greenhorns and the beginners and that kind of stuff, expecting that they're not going to get into trouble. And so from my perspective, it's always a better idea to plan for the worst and then hope for the best. Thankfully, I phoned Pat and I said, look, I don't have any tools. They're only arriving tomorrow. Please make sure that you take some tire levers and some other essential tools in case the worst happens. Now, it's highly unlikely, given the roads that we were on, that I was going to, pull a puncture as an example. I've got 3 more tubes on this. The tires are brand new. It's not really rocky and technical terrain and that kind of stuff. But again, like, you just don't know. Shit can happen. And so you want to be prepared for the worst situation possible. Now, the next point I wanted to make is that packing smart is better than packing more. So less is more, right? So the less you take with you, the better. So what do I mean by that? Well, take what is only essential. So as an example, definitely take 2 pairs of gloves. Why? Because you want a breathable summer glove, and then you want a warmer winter glove. It's just turned spring here in Colorado, and I started riding with these summer gloves, and it actually made the ride uncomfortable. It was still cold. It was probably around 35 degrees on the bike for an extended period of time. So I wound up swapping these gloves for the warmer ones. Now, other things about packing smart is food, right? You don't know what food is going to be at the destination. And equally, if you have a breakdown, you eat something. I strongly recommend this brand here, Mountain House Adventure Bike Meals. Totally dry, lasts a long time, quick to cook, and doesn't actually taste that bad.
She tastes great.
Yeah. Now, another thing that you actually have to take with you is a first aid kit. So that's what I have here. Again, you can buy this online. It's got everything in here from, gauzes to all sorts of things for first aid emergency situation. And then what Pat actually bought for me, given the fact that we were in such a remote location, is this thing. So in here is basically an emergency foil, right? So if you do crash, hopefully not, and your body goes into shock, you can actually, do something about it. So that was another thing. Thanks, Pat, for buying that thing. And so the other thing that's really important is to ride with the right crew. Now, Pat and I have done multiple multi-day rides. He's been riding for, I don't know how long, 30 years, which is probably 28 years longer than I have, as an example. He really knows a lot about mechanical stuff. So if something does go wrong, Pat is obviously a great guy to have with you because he can obviously fix the bike and his skill set's higher in that area. But probably what is really important is to not ride with maniacs. We didn't really tap out further than like 60 miles an hour on gravel road, just steady, constant pace, really taking it easy, not pushing the limits too much, apart from the time when we were arriving at the bunkhouse and we absolutely were dicing it on the gravel road, almost touching elbows, sort of thing, healthy fun as an example. But don't ride with people that are going to push you above your skill level. And so I really do believe, always leave some skill left in the fuel tank. If you're being pushed to ride at 100 miles an hour, as an example, off-road, and you don't know who these guys are, and I've been in those situations before, you want to then keep up with them, or you feel like you need to keep up with them. And so that can also lead into a situation that, you're going to overdo it. You might have a spill, and one spill is all it takes to really get into all sorts of trouble.
Way to go, brother. Good job, man.
Dude, that dicing there was awesome. We were like almost hitting elbows.
My tires were spinning the whole time.
Oh no. Thanks for the rock shower.
But that thing's fast. Yeah, it was payback. You got me earlier.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, man, that was awesome. That was awesome.
I would never do that unless it was payback.
Yeah, no.
You can do it to me.
Oh, awesome.
These headlights are too expensive, man, you know?
Yeah, no, exactly. Oh, very good.
Right, so the next tip I wanted to give you are safety devices. And I don't just mean an AXP skid plate. I actually mean devices that can really save your life. On the Wyoming BDR that we did last year, totally remote. No one's going to come find you if you're into any kind of trouble. There's more cows than humans there. And so you need a way to prevent a situation where you have a spill or one of your fellow riders has a spill and, there's an emergency situation. How the hell do you get out of that? And so one of the safety devices that I'm a great believer in is this one here. It's the Garmin Mini 2 is this one. And you just simply hit an SOS button that connects to satellites and emergency services can come find you. They know the location, you can communicate and that kind of stuff. Another tip is I've seen guys with these Garmin Minis and then they attach it to their motorcycle instead of to themselves. And that is a bad idea. Like if you get thrown from the motorbike, you break your leg or something like that, and you're not able to move, how are you supposed to get to your Garmin, right? Or your Garmin Mini? And so what I do and what I strongly recommend is that you always attach it to yourself, not the bike. On this Moscow Moto 12 liter backpack that's got hydration in it as well and all that kind of stuff, is to attach it to the thing that you're riding on. So in other words, if I got thrown from the bike, I don't need to go and crawl and try and pull the Garmin Mini off the motorcycle in order to get emergency help. Now, the next point is this: capture the story. These rides, oftentimes, you forget like where you were, what was the view like, what were people saying and that kind of stuff. And there's a place for just being isolated in terms of, just doing the ride, caring about the ride and that kind of stuff. Now, on this particular ride, I took my DJI Mini 4 drone, and it just totally captured the whole ride in a much, much better way. The images were amazing. The experience of the ride was completely amazing. And that was all captured on a drone. Nothing can really give you the experience of, or remembering the experience of looking at drone footage. It ultimately really does change the whole landscape, pun intended, of the experience. You can always revisit that and at any time. And so I took a lot of drone footage and it just gave me a whole new perspective on not only the ride itself, but also the destination. So that concludes this video, guys. Let me know below in the comments what makes an incredible adventure ride for you. What have you learned doing multi-day adventure rides? This is MotoBrewski signing out, and I'll see you again soon.
If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe, and most importantly, share it with your favorite MotoBrewski.